but I you know, like, because it's like a boring one, but I've been obsessed with puzzles and treasure maps and all that stuff, like a huge Goonies fan. Like, I love National Treasure more than grown adults should and stuff. So I've wanted to do a show like this for a very, very long time. And it's just been like kind of percolating in the back of my brain for like 4 or 5 years, trying to like just figure it out. Because they're really, really hard to do and make them sustainable on a network kind of TV show. And then on top of that, I came, you know, the image of the teaser just came to me one morning, you know, because I lived in Times Square when there was the Viacom, bombing basically, or the attempted bombing of Viacom, and so I'd seen it cleared out. And the bomb team is such a great image that it's always stayed with me. And I just thought one morning, I was like, well, what if instead of a bomb there was a woman inside that bag? And then I was like, well, and I was like, she was probably left for someone. I was like, well, what if she had like the name of an FBI agent tattooed on her back? And then I was like, well, what if she had way more tattooed on her back? Like, what if there's a whole treasure map on her back? And then I was like, well, what if it should be her whole body, really? And then I was like, oh, this is great, and I just kind of went from there.
So just one quick follow-up to that. That's how a lot of ideas come about, but I'm wondering, now that you've got it all started, do you have an endpoint in mind? Do you have an endpoint in mind?
It's impossible to do these things without endpoints, you know, and the reality is, you know, I think people have been burned by shows like this so many times, and on both the audience and the network side. And so when you pitch a network now, you know, like, you don't, like, it's like a 1 hour pitch when you're like, here's my idea for a TV show, and only about 10 minutes of it is the actual pilot that you're being paid to write. The rest of it is like what's actually going on. So they want to know in that meeting that you know what's happening. And so, yeah, no, I mean, like, we have, you know, we just got our back nine picked up, which is fantastic, but we've been planning the season like it had a back nine. We've been planning the season like it goes for several years. So it's like we knew what episode 22 was, you know, on the first day of the writer's room, and so we've been writing towards that, and then we know what the second season's about, you know, so it's like, it's important to have that, because again, shows like these, it's like, it's so easy for them to feel like all middles as well. Do you know what I mean? Where it's just like, it's like a rad pilot, and you're like, oh man, I'm so in. And then you just get like these little breadcrumbs all the way through the season, maybe something towards like at the season finale. But for us, we don't like breadcrumbs. We're like, it's like whole loads of stuff every episode. So yeah.
Speaking of which, I'm always fascinated to see why some shows work and some don't, and I'd like to hear your perspective, because this is like the highest rated new drama of this.
I have no idea.
Because we cover shows like this all the time at Comic-Con. Some of them last maybe 2 or 3 seasons. Others flame out like in the first season. And a lot of people think this will last, you know, for at least 3 seasons. So what do you think in terms of like with the fan response? I'm sure you're seeing things on social media.
Oh, it's overwhelming.
Besides the marketing, which was excellent for the show, but in terms of why people are connecting so well, so quickly with this show.
Well, you know, I think this show is what network television does really, really well. You know, it's a big, loud, fun show. It's got great character drama. It's got fantastic production value. But it also has that kind of like week-to-week puzzle excitement that, you know, like cable and binge watching and stuff like that is great. But there is something fun about, like, you know, there's nothing more satisfying and frustrating as an audience for like that final moment when it cuts to black and you're like, oh God, I gotta watch next week. And then like the fun of like the like talking about it with your friends all week and like trying to figure it out, and like, you know, we try to engage people online as much as possible, both the cast and the writers. You know, we're up for getting into discussions about stuff. So I don't know, but at the end of the day, you know, these things are binary. Like we felt really good about the show. I think NBC did an extraordinary job marketing it. I mean, like, we have a good time slot. Like, all of those things really help. But why people connect to shows, I think it's a couple of things. I think it's really fun in a time when people want to have some fun, and I think it feels slightly unique, even though it's pretty familiar. And you know, you can't discount the fact that like we have one of the best casts in television, you know, and also on top of that, there aren't a lot of like kick-ass women on TV right now, and it's really nice to see, you know, I think women not be the victim all the time in an action hour and have them kick a little ass as well. So I think, but again, I don't know, it's like, is that why or is that why? I'm just happy that it connected.
You talked a minute ago about how you have it all mapped out, you know, episode 22. nonetheless, as you're producing the show week to week and the actors bring whatever they're bringing, what kind of ways have things evolved maybe you weren't expecting them to as you began the show?
Well, certainly where you have wiggle room is with the characters, right? And so, like, we know the backstory is pretty solid, and so that we can't really mess around with too much. But yeah, no. What's so fun about writing a TV show over like a feature film is like as I get to know the writers or as I get to know the actors and the writers get to know the actors, both their incredible strengths and their very small weaknesses, you can start to write towards like what they're great at, and you start to incorporate them into the show a little bit, and so that's really fun, and they've all brought so much. I mean, it's been they're really fantastic, and I'm a very lucky showrunner. Yeah.
Do you know what every tattoo signifies? Or have you? There's
an enormous amount that have been planned out. There are some tattoos on her body that are specifically generic, so that if I get into trouble and need to call an audible about something, that I can use those tattoos as like, oh gosh, we need to do this, or like, oh my god, this person can't be on the show anymore for whatever reason, or like I have to like make a change. So there's some get out of jail free tattoos on her body that'll like help me tell the story as we go for hopefully a bunch of years.
Do you have it like all mapped out in the writer's room? Like, is there
there's
like a silhouette of her body with all the tattoos?
It's not a silhouette. We have more pictures of naked women in our writer's room than most shows legally are allowed to have. Yeah, I was like, Jamie can never come into this room. Like, it's just all giant photos of the tattoos and Jamie's body. And so, yeah, no, I mean they're pretty mapped out.
What's the tattoo process, the makeup artist process for her? And I mean, is there going to come a point where she's just wearing a lot of turtlenecks so we don't have to do that every day?
She's so, like if it was anyone else, it would be very, very difficult, but Jamie is so gung-ho. Jamie wants more tattoos. She never wants less tattoos. Like, she's just like, because the thing is, it's like, it's so rare in your career, both for all of us, to have something that connects so hard. And like, when Jamie and I went to the San Diego Comic-Con, the show hadn't even aired yet, and people were like cosplaying the character, so it's like, to be a part of something that is iconic like that is kind of, that's a once in a career thing. So she really leans into it. She's a huge fan. I mean, she's so bummed she can't be here. She really is pretty sick. But she she's a fan first and an actress second. And so she knows like the show can't put her in turtlenecks all the time.
Right.
So, but that being said, we try to make.
How long is the process? I mean,
It's about an hour and a half a day for the regular look. It's like 3.5 hours when she wears a tank top, and 7.5 hours for the full body. So it's a lot of time. It's like she's playing an alien on TV. Like she goes through prosthetics every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the casting process? What was the easiest and hardest role to cast?
You know what? They were all easy. I said this before. This never happens on TV. I got my first choice for all 7 characters.
That's amazing.
So that's like. It's unreal. It's unreal. And what's fun about how the show continues is you suddenly have more and more time for the other characters. Like right now it's been very Jane and Weller heavy, but as of episode 4 we really get to know a lot more about Patterson. We get into Zapata and Reed's life, Mayfair, so it's like the show will start to grow into an ensemble drama with this central mystery at its core.
Have any of that, so you got your first choice for everybody. Have any of the actors brought something to the character that you didn't expect and you've been surprised by? Specifically, Ashley's character provides comic relief.
Yeah.
Was that planned, or how did that all work out?
I mean, Ashley's character is the one that's gone through the greatest metamorphosis, I think, from like original conception to like second episode. Ashley and I are terribly similar. We have very similar sense of humor, and so to have someone, like when we first started just even hanging out during the pilot, everyone was like, oh my god, you guys are terrifying. Like we think the same stuff is funny. So, but that's great to have someone on that, that has that sensibilities in the show, because then I can write to it. And certainly what I thought one of my only problems with the pilot is I wish it would have been funnier. And so to be able to introduce a ton of humor through the Patterson character, I think Rob is like hilarious as well. Like everyone can tell jokes. So certainly, yeah, Patterson's character was like originally supposed to be much older and so like in her 50s. But we were having trouble finding them, and then Ashley came in and gave such a great read that we were like, I was like, I'm going to rewrite this character. Ashley, it's got to be Ashley. And so, and it's kind of that for all of them, like when you cast somebody, it stops being like an abstract thing and becomes concrete. And so, having someone like, for instance, having Marianne John Baptiste on the show is like, forget it. It's crazy. So, and when I met with her, I was like, I promise I will write you great stuff. If you come to the show, I will write you great stuff. You won't have to just be an exposition machine every week. You have great stuff. And so, I kept my promise. She's got great stuff coming up, I think, especially her and this character Carter, which we just met at the end of episode 3, where if you come to we're showing like a little bit of a sizzle reel for the first part of the season. You'll see that Carter's kind of the big bad of the season, and Marianne's got a ton of stuff with him. So,
how hard is tattoo continuity?
Pardon me?
How hard is tattoo continuity on this show, in the sense of making sure that week to week that
they're the same?
Tats match, yeah.
Oh well, it's a very complicated application process, but they're the same every time.
Really, there's no.
No. It's basically like rub-on tattoos, but the professional ones. Okay. So they come printed out as giant sheets, and they're molded to her body. So it's not like we draw them on every time. They're actually like they're semi-permanent, and they take a lot to get off. And yeah, no, absolutely.
What is it about being?
By the way, I love. I hope you're cosplaying. If not, you have just a great sense of style.
I just got this in my closet.
Okay, great.
Last question, please.
What is it about being a showrunner that? Like before, and you didn't know you had to do, or like what are some duties that maybe not everybody knows a showrunner has to do for a show?
Well, I think on a first season show, you're kind of the obviously like you supply like the final yes and no on everything, but also it's just like making sure the mood is good, making sure people have fun. The job that everyone is doing here is like exhausting. It's like really, really difficult. The hours are long. It's 6-7 days a week sometimes, with fight training and all that stuff. So I think it's just like your job first and foremost is like maintain a sense of fun and play, even at like 5 a.m. on a Friday night or Saturday morning, and everyone's just like, I want to go home. But thankfully, also, like, it's your job to make sure the episodes turn out good, so that when people are exhausted, they can go home Monday night and watch the show and be like, oh shit, no, okay, it's worth it. I don't know, that's a dumb answer, I guess.
Also, can you possibly share if you have any updates on Bored to Death movie?
Yes, Jonathan and I wrote a Bored to Death movie about a year and a half ago, and I think it's really good. It's pretty unlikely, I think, right now. I think we may, he might throw that out. He might just like try writing a whole new one. But he's terribly busy on Blood Talk right now on Starz. He's got another season of that. Jason's doing Mozart in the Jungle. Zach's got Baskets coming up on FX. And Ted is like Ted, so he's busy all the time. So, but it's something we'd all love to do. We're all still very close. We all still we're shooting Blindspot in the old Bored to Death stage.